It happens faster than anyone can react. One impossible flash, white, silent, absolute, rips across the horizon and erases the line between normal life and the unthinkable. In the few seconds before the shockwave arrives, people freeze, blink, stare, trying to understand why the sun suddenly rose in the wrong direction. Then the world hits back. Windows implode, streets vanish into dust, cars lift off the ground, and millions of Americans take their first breath in a reality where nothing works, no one knows what's happening, and survival becomes a race against physics itself. This isn't a movie. This is what experts say the first 24 hours after a nuclear strike on the United States would actually look like. It begins with a light so bright it seems impossible. 1 second, the morning is ordinary. Coffee steaming on counters, alarms chirping, traffic humming along highways, and the next, a blinding glare slices across the horizon, white and scorching, turning the sky into molten gold. People blink, squint, and shield their eyes, but the flash is everywhere at once, consuming everything in its path. Ground zero doesn't wait for anyone. Buildings evaporate in a searing instant, vehicles melt into the concrete, and the few who dared to peek are left blinded, their retinas burned by the intensity of a weapon humanity never imagined wielding. Outskirts of the impact feel a different kind of terror. The flash doesn't kill instantly here, but it reveals the fragility of life. Windows shatter, glass raining down like deadly confetti. Doors buckle, streetlights implode, and the deafening silence before the shockwave hits weighs on everyone. The world holds its breath for a heartbeat, and then the ground trembles. A wave of heat and pressure sweeps outward, bending metal, cracking pavement, and throwing the unprepared into chaos. Cars flip, fires ignite spontaneously, and screams pierce the air as the invisible hand of destruction reaches farther than anyone expected. In these first terrifying minutes, phones die, power falters, and communication networks collapse. People reach for their screens, hoping for news, guidance, something to make sense of the incomprehensible. But the silence is absolute. Above them, the first hints of fallout begin to spiral skyward, an unseen enemy riding on clouds of dust and ash. Every instinct tells the body to run, but where do you go when everything familiar has disappeared in a flash? And yet, even amid panic, human eyes search for understanding. 2 minutes in, 3 minutes, the mind struggles to process what has just occurred. The first minute has already decided who survives the next 24 hours. One wrong step, one failure to find shelter, and the consequences are fatal. In a heartbeat, ordinary life has ended, and the question lingers in every mind that survived the light. What happens next? The shockwave rolls through, a rolling drumbeat of destruction that shakes the earth itself. Streets are chaos incarnate. Vehicles overturned, fires erupting in abandoned buildings, debris thrown like missiles by the force of the blast. People stagger, ears ringing from ruptured eardrums, hands pressed to their heads, eyes wide with disbelief. Phones no longer buzz with notifications, they are dead, their screens blank. Social media, news apps, emergency lines, nothing works. The very systems we trust to connect, to inform, to warn us, have vanished in an instant. Some run without direction, adrenaline driving them through streets filled with smoke and ash. Others freeze, paralyzed by the incomprehensible scale of what has just happened. In homes, families huddle together, holding children close, shielding them from windows that have already shattered under the invisible weight of overpressure. A mother screams, a father shouts, and the tiny sounds of panic multiply into a collective symphony of fear. Outside, the sky is thick with dust, smoke, and the first hints of fallout, and every movement carries risk, every breath a potential hazard. Meanwhile, emergency responders and law enforcement scramble blindly. Radio communications flicker, military protocols initiate, and the first official alerts attempt to reach the population. But with towers down, lines severed, and power grids crippled by electromagnetic pulses, most Americans are isolated, left only with their instincts and the human compulsion to survive. The sense of control, the illusion that we can manage the chaos, disappears completely. Every second feels stretched. Every minute is a turning point. People begin to realize that survival is no longer theoretical. It is urgent. Those who seek shelter must navigate broken streets, avoid flaming wreckage, and make snap decisions about radiation exposure, debris, and potential secondary detonations. Panic spreads faster than the smoke. Rumors, half-formed, unverified, travel by word of mouth, heightening tension. And yet, amidst the fear, some find clarity. Instincts sharpen, leaders emerge in neighborhoods, quick decisions can save lives. 10 minutes have passed and the world is unrecognizable. The bomb's impact has ended the comfort of normalcy. What remains is survival, and the terrifying realization that every next action will determine whether someone lives or dies. By the time the first hour unfolds, the initial chaos begins to give way to a different, quieter terror. The sky itself turns against those who survived the flash and the shockwave. A gray-brown cloud, thick with radioactive fallout, drifts across the horizon. The wind carries it invisibly, silently. A lethal presence no one can see or touch, but everyone will feel. People who thought they were safe on the outskirts of the blast now confront a new enemy. The air they breathe. Inside homes, families realize that doors and windows offer only partial protection. Radios crackle faintly, repeating fragments of emergency instructions. But power failures and EMP disruptions render most of the official guidance incomplete. Fear grows not from what people can see, but from what they cannot. Every breath, every step outside could be deadly. Those who understood radiation from documentaries or drills scramble for basements, subways, and improvised shelters. Those who did not understand are paralyzed by confusion, exposed in yards, streets, and open spaces. Cars clog the streets, ironically providing no escape. Drivers peer into the thickening sky, unable to discern direction, slowed by debris, fires, and the growing panic of others. The first responders, still attempting to reach the worst-hit areas, are slowed too, confronted with impassable roads and unfamiliar hazards. Emergency sirens wail, but the sound is drowned out by the collective heartbeat of a nation struggling to comprehend the scope of disaster. Above the chaos, the fallout cloud continues its silent descent. Dust and ash mix with microscopic radioactive particles, coating vehicles, sidewalks, and rooftops. The invisible threat begins to erode more than the physical world. It erodes confidence, trust, and rationality. People begin to whisper, shout, argue, and accuse. Some cling to family, some panic alone. Human behavior shifts in real time, from disbelief to instinctual survival. Every choice, open a window, step outside, move to a car, stay in the basement, carries weight, life, or death. The government struggles to respond, issuing fragmented alerts, recommending immediate sheltering, but for many, guidance comes too late. The cityscape is already transforming under the shadow of the invisible enemy. In the first hour, Americans learn a terrifying truth. Modern war does not always arrive with explosions or fire. It can descend silently from above, in the wind, in the sky, in the particles that no eye can see. And as the hour closes, a terrifying realization settles over the nation. Survival is no longer a theoretical exercise. It is urgent, immediate, and unpredictable. The sky has turned to poison, and the first real test of human endurance begins. 3 hours have passed since the flash, and the initial shock has morphed into an overwhelming, nationwide realization. This is not a localized disaster. The bomb's destructive power has shattered infrastructure, crippled communications, and left millions exposed to invisible threats. Streets are clogged with abandoned cars, overturned by panic or the shockwave's force. Fires rage unchecked, turning familiar neighborhoods into a surreal landscape of smoke, ash, and crumbling concrete. People move cautiously, instinctively scanning for danger, but every direction seems equally perilous. Hospitals strain under the sudden surge of casualties. Emergency rooms overflow with the wounded. Burns, lacerations, ruptured eardrums, while generators hum weakly, flickering under the demand of life-saving equipment. Medical staff, trained for crises but unprepared for this scale, triage relentlessly, making split-second decisions with consequences that cannot be undone. Outside, roads jam as families attempt to flee irradiated areas. But traffic is paralyzed by panic and debris, and chaos spreads faster than any official response can contain it. Communication, once taken for granted, has become the most precious commodity. Phones remain dead, internet lines are down, and radio frequencies carry only fragments of official broadcasts. Misinformation spreads through word of mouth, creating a tense haze where fear outpaces fact. Every rumor, another bomb, a secondary strike, an imminent attack, triggers panic, forcing individuals to make impossible choices based on incomplete knowledge. The authority of governments, once unshakable, is fractured by silence, leaving citizens to navigate survival on instinct and observation. Amid the chaos, subtle patterns emerge. Small acts of organization appear. Neighbors guide each other to basements. First responders improvise evacuation routes, and communities attempt to coordinate in the absence of centralized command. Yet the underlying tension never dissipates. Each moment is a delicate balance between exposure and shelter, action and inaction. Ordinary routines have vanished. The collective rhythm of society has been replaced by the pulse of survival. As the third hour closes, the nation collectively grasps the scale of what has occurred. It is no longer a single strike or a fleeting disaster. It is a fundamental rupture. People begin to understand that their environment, their routines, their systems of trust have all been upended. For millions of Americans, survival now depends on immediate adaptability, keen observation, and instinctive decision-making. In these first 3 hours, the foundation of a once secure society has been shaken to its core, and the true challenge of enduring the next 24 hours has only just begun. By the 12th hour, the country is no longer recognizable. The initial blast and shockwave have left their mark, but it is the silent, creeping presence of fallout that now dominates reality. Radioactive particles drift through the air, settling on streets, rooftops, and vehicles. Every breath outside carries an invisible threat. Every surface could be contaminated. Those who sought shelter early remain inside, while others, less fortunate or unaware, grapple with exposure, nausea, and panic. The outside world has become a no man's land, simultaneously deadly and eerily quiet. Inside homes and basements, fear shifts from immediate injury to anticipation. Families huddle together, listening to intermittent emergency broadcasts that crackle over battery-powered radios. The messages are fragmented, repetitive, and often outdated, yet they are the only link to a larger reality beyond the smoke-stained walls. Without full information, imagination fills the void. Rumors of additional strikes, of cities engulfed in fire, spread like wildfire, feeding anxiety and paranoia. The invisible enemy, radiation, has transformed uncertainty into a tangible terror. Meanwhile, communities begin to adapt, small pockets of order forming amid chaos. Neighbors share food, water, and first aid supplies. Some brave the streets to rescue the injured or retrieve essentials, improvising routes through debris-strewn neighborhoods. Acts of humanity emerge in tandem with instinctual survival. Strangers band together, creating temporary shelters, while volunteer networks attempt to patch the holes left by failing institutions. Yet these glimpses of hope are fragile, often overshadowed by the omnipresent threat of fallout. The psychological toll grows heavier with each passing hour. The absence of information breeds despair, confusion, and mistrust. Even those with knowledge of radiation and survival struggle to maintain composure, constantly calculating exposure, distance, and timing. The nation, built on routine, infrastructure, and predictability, now exists in a suspended state, living yet immobilized, aware of danger but unable to fully control it. By the close of the first 12 hours, the country has learned a harsh lesson. Modern warfare is as much about disruption, fear, and uncertainty as it is about destruction. Systems that once guaranteed safety, electricity, communications, supply chains, have collapsed or been rendered unreliable. Humanity, stripped of its usual supports, must now rely on resilience, adaptation, and instinct. In the silent spaces between flickering emergency broadcasts, the first true realization sinks in. Survival is no longer optional. It is urgent and it is personal. Night falls, and with it comes a darkness far heavier than the absence of sunlight. The cities that once thrummed with life now lie in shadow, their streets illuminated only by the flickering glow of distant fires, emergency lights, and the faint shimmer of radiation in the clouds above. Power grids have failed completely, leaving millions in blacked-out homes. The comforting hum of electricity, the glow of screens, even the faint buzz of a refrigerator, all gone. Humanity is left with only shadows, whispers, and the persistent knowledge that the world has irrevocably changed. For those who survived the initial blast and early fallout, fear shifts from shock to anticipation. Rumors swirl of additional strikes, of incoming missiles, of contaminated zones spreading far beyond known impact sites. People huddle together, whispering to children, comforting neighbors, reinforcing doors and windows against an enemy they cannot see. The darkness amplifies every sound, a distant shout, the crack of splintering wood, the faint rustle of debris. Silence, once taken for granted, now becomes a vessel for dread. Yet even in this night, the human instinct for resilience emerges. Candlelight glimmers through windows as families create temporary sanctuaries. Neighbors share rations and water, improvising communication networks through hand signals, flashlights, and shortwave radios. Amateur volunteers guide small groups toward basements, subway tunnels, or reinforced shelters. The night, while terrifying, becomes a crucible where courage, ingenuity, and compassion are forged in real time. Authorities, hidden in bunkers and command centers, attempt to coordinate responses. Emergency broadcasts crackle through battery-powered radios, instructing citizens to stay indoors, ration resources, and avoid exposed areas. But fragmented signals, incomplete information, and public panic create a paradox. The guidance is present, yet simultaneously powerless. Survival depends less on instruction than on observation, decision-making, and the ability to adapt under pressure. By the end of this first night, America has been transformed. The familiar rhythm of life, streets filled with commuters, lights blazing in apartment windows, the constant hum of machines, has vanished. In its place stands a society defined by fear, improvisation, and a fragile, tenuous hope. Darkness has magnified vulnerability, but it has also illuminated resilience. Amid fires, smoke, and shadowed streets, the first human triumphs of survival emerge quietly. Acts of empathy, leadership, and endurance that will carry through the next day. Morning comes, but it brings no comfort, no sense of normalcy. The sun rises over a country transformed. Streets that once carried the rhythm of daily life lie empty, littered with debris and abandoned vehicles. Fires smolder in neighborhoods, painting the skyline with a muted orange glow. The familiar sounds of life, traffic, chatter, music, have been replaced by a heavy silence broken only by distant sirens, the crackle of emergency radios, and the occasional shout of someone scavenging for essentials. People emerge cautiously from shelters, blinking against the harsh light, eyes still adjusting after the oppressive darkness of the night. The first realization strikes: the world has irrevocably changed. Power grids remain down. Radios offer only fragmented updates, and every route, every familiar landmark is now uncertain. Families gather their sparse resources, assessing food, water, and medicine, calculating what will be enough to survive until the next signal, the next report, the next hint of guidance. Communities begin forming again, fragile networks built from necessity rather than choice. Government and emergency authorities, operating from bunkers or partially functioning command centers, issue the first formal addresses. Instructions are cautious, precise, but incomplete. The sheer scale of destruction and the invisibility of radiation make communication a delicate art. Convey enough to guide citizens, but never so much as to incite mass panic. And yet, despite the chaos, a quiet determination emerges. Survivors adapt, improvising shelters, rationing supplies, helping the injured. The human instinct to endure becomes palpable, almost tangible in streets lined with ruin. Psychologically, the day daws heavy. The first hours were survival, the night was endurance, and now morning is reflection. The world feels muted, fragile, and finite. Yet amid fear and uncertainty, there is resilience. Acts of compassion, sharing food, helping neighbors, guiding children, illuminate the darkness, proving that even when systems fail, humanity can persist. By the end of these first 24 hours, the lesson is stark. Life, society, and civilization can be shattered in an instant, but the human spirit endures. Streets remain silent, networks remain fractured, and the familiar rhythm of existence is lost. Yet within that silence, amid the fear and devastation, hope persists. America has awoken to a new reality, and its people must now navigate a world forever changed. Survival is no longer theoretical. It is real, immediate, and inescapably personal.